Lake Effect brings you conversations about what's happening in Milwaukee and the people, places, and organizations that shape the community. This is Lake Effect Spotlight from WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR.
Milwaukee Recreation's director Lynn Greb announced this fall that she will retire from the department at the end of January. She began her career with Milwaukee Rec in 1989 and worked her way to become director of the department in 2015. Lake Effect's Excret Nunez speaks with Greb about the work she's accomplished throughout her career and what's next for Milwaukee Recreation.
Why did you decide this was the right time for you to retire?
Ooh, good question. I'll let you know that answer in a few years if it was the right time. But I guess I say that we were working on a pretty big project that came from the COVID funding that Milwaukee Public Schools received. And one of the areas that we directed a portion of that funding was to extracurricular activities. And I was assigned to be the project lead on that. And I knew it was a 3-year project because that was the term of the spending. So I thought, maybe when that project is done, that might be a good stopping point because the next thing is always going to come along. So there really is never that true break. But I feel like there's been some major things we've accomplished as a department, and maybe this hopefully was the right time to make that exit.
Absolutely. And so I'm sure you're also thinking about what will the next chapter for you be?
It's crazy. For sure, I'm thinking about it because I was thinking, okay, the first 12 years you're going to school, then you're going to college. So you have everything's kind of figured out for me, anyhow, it was. And then I got my job, and then I've been in that for 36 years. So I actually don't know what it feels like to be unscheduled for an extended period of time. So I think it's going to be really interesting to figure that out. Like, I feel like the first work day of my retirement, I might just be like lost, not knowing what to do. But when people retire, I say enjoy being a full-time recreator because, like, for me, that would be totally my goal. I've been a full-time recreation employee for many years, and now I'm looking forward to being that other kind of full-time recreator and experiencing a lot of things that I've seen other people enjoy, and now a chance to see it from the other side.
Right. And you began your career with Milwaukee Recreation nearly 36 years ago. How did you first get interested and involved in public recreation?
I remember I was at the University of Whitewater, and I took a class on Introduction to Recreation because at that point I was thinking I loved sports, I liked to be active, so they didn't have a major in recreation, but they had physical education, so I thought, oh, I'll look into that area. So I took this Intro to Recreation class, and I was like, oh my gosh, I could do this for a career. Like, there are people that do this work full time. And the class just really intrigued me. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to shift directions here. And I ended up transferring to UWM, Milwaukee, which at that time had a major in recreation, and took it from there. And it was just a great start because I enjoyed the classes, the subject matter, and then I went from there.
That's amazing. I'm wondering, too, what are the different positions you've held throughout your career?
Well, the first full-time job I had was as an activity specialist, and my job was to go around to the various schools in Milwaukee Public Schools and teach leisure education units to the special ed classes. So we'd spend 6 weeks in a class, and I would teach them table games, and we'd do an art project one week, and then we'd do a cooking project, teaching them different ways to enjoy their free time and find things that interest them. And then I moved into more of the community rec side. I started in therapeutic recreation. That was actually my undergraduate degree. And the big project I was assigned at that time was the recreation guide.
Whoa.
Which many people that if you live in the city of Milwaukee, you get a copy 4 times a year. And so a lot of our corrections were by hand with photocopies of multiple copies. So it was a very interesting process, but I got to know a lot about what we offered as a department. I got to know all my colleagues because we all had to work together on the copy. So I did that for many years. I also had dabbled in a number of special projects over time. My job kind of evolved from that. A cool thing I got to do was write a grant to get funding to start our mobile recreation van that travels to various shelters and community activities. From that position, I moved into the after-school realm, and I was overseeing all of our community learning centers and childcare camps and working with a team of people on that program. I did that for a number of years. From there, then I got hired as the manager of operations, which got me into more of the budgeting, the facility areas of our operation, the technology. I still worked with the marketing area. So I did that for a number of years. And then in 2015, my former boss, Molly Barrett, retired as the director, and that's when I was able to step into that role in 2015.
So you really know the ins and outs of Milwaukee Recreation and worked your way up.
I did. And I think that, we have such a long history in the city of Milwaukee. Our department really started in 1911, and there's such a rich tradition to our operation. And I've always enjoyed working for a large department serving the city of Milwaukee. There's various amounts of need for recreation services throughout our community. So having to be able to be in a position to impact that has always kept me motivated, because I see the value of what our programs can do, and I know there's a lot of people that can benefit from that. It's just been a joy to be involved.
Absolutely. So in the past decade that you've been the director of Milwaukee Recreation, you've led several projects, including the department's Dream Build Play initiative. Can you tell me about this project and what you envisioned for it when you first started as the director?
Yes, so we maintain 52 playfields throughout the city of Milwaukee, and they're smaller type parks where they have some recreational amenities and some green space. And for many years, we maintained those play spaces and we program them. That was really our responsibility. But over time, there wasn't the investment in making sure those facilities were meeting the needs of the neighborhood. And of course, time, weather, use wore a lot of these playfields down. And I was just seeing this opportunity that we could do something more than just program these sites and maintain them. And I think what the thing we're most proud of with that particular project is that the basis of it all was around equity. And when we started looking at which playfield do we do first, we have 52, and honestly, over 60% were rated at like fair to poor conditions. So the odds of finding one to do, it was very great because there were so many that needed help. But I heard the former director in Minneapolis Parks and Recreation, I saw something they had done, and they created this matrix that looked at a number of characteristics of each neighborhood. And then by looking at those characteristics and doing some analyses, they came up with a rating system. And then they rank ordered all of their parks according to this, poverty levels around the park, or crime rates, or number of children under 18. And so we took that concept and applied it here in Milwaukee. And by doing that, we came up with really our priorities for where we were going to invest initially, where the need was the greatest, not just on the condition of the site, but the need of the neighborhood. And so I think 10 or so we've done now. If you look at which locations they are, there's no arguing for this is where the investment was needed the most. And that's kind of how we're approaching these projects. So we have a long ways to go yet, but the ones that have been completed, I think, have really transformed neighborhoods.
So as you reflect on your 36 years within the department, nearly 10 as the director, is there anything you wish you could have accomplished during your time?
I hate to say no, like I've done it all and, now it's time to close the door. But I can't help but think how fortunate I have been. I mean, I've always had a job I've enjoyed. I've enjoyed the people. Like, not everybody can say that. And I just am filled with gratitude that I landed in a job at Milwaukee Rec, and I never looked at another job for my entire career. There was never another job. So when you ask me that question, nothing specific comes to mind like, ooh, if I only had, one more year, I would do this. Because there's always going to be that next thing. So that's what made leaving hard because, we're building this community center now. So do I stay until the community center is open? But then I know there'll be the next thing because that's just how we are as a department. Like we're never settling for status quo or, well, that's good enough. Now we can just kind of sit back and, change the date each year. It's always like, what is that next thing? What's that next trend? How can we? And so there never was probably going to be a time that things would just stop and then you'd know that's time to go. But I can't help but say how grateful I am for the opportunity to have done all the jobs I did, and particularly to serve as the director, because I always told people I had the best job in the district, and I believe that. I love watching people enjoy their free time, doing things that make them happy, and to say, we had a part of that, and to be in a position to help make some decisions that can make things better for people. Couldn't have asked for a better career.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I do want to briefly bring up the Department of Athletics and Academics, which is a department you oversee. Milwaukee's Common Council released a statement of no confidence in NPS Athletics Commissioner Bobby Kelsey after the department failed to file paperwork that resulted in the 2 Milwaukee schools forfeiting their football season. What's your response to this?
Well, my response is that last Friday, myself and one of the coaches from one of the teams had the opportunity to present an appeal to the Wisconsin Interscholastic Athletic Association Board of Control, really presenting our case that we know our athletes had missed postseason play this year because of the failure to get that paperwork submitted. But in lieu of going with 2 years, which is generally the sanction for that non-reporting error, we were able to get the Board of Control to vote in favor of reducing our suspension from the postseason down to 1 year. So what initially was a very unfortunate situation, and certainly feel very sorry to our student athletes that this impacted. By making this appeal, we could salvage the second year of what would have been a 2-year postseason ban. So in that regard, I feel like that was a positive outcome for us, and fortunate to the Board of Control for listening to our appeal and supporting that. So we're just working hard to put procedures in place and make checks and balances so that this kind of oversight isn't something we have to deal with in the future.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for your response.
Yep.
So before, we start wrapping up the end of our conversation, I want to ask, how do you envision the future of Milwaukee Recreation?
I envision it probably like maybe other people did 36 years ago. That, in 36 years, somebody else may be sitting in this chair talking about all the amazing things that the department has accomplished and being a part of that. And again, I feel like when you have your base is so solid, like the recreation department is and has been, I don't have any concerns that the great work is going to be continued. There's so many wonderful staff that we have that really do all the work day in and day out, and all the part-time staff we have. We have, well over 1,000 individuals that we hire as instructors, officials, timers, scorekeepers, building staff, event staff. There's so many people I've crossed paths with that I just can't say enough about, the fact that people would dedicate their time above and beyond, many of them having full-time jobs, to come and work for the recreation department so that we can do everything that we do. And so with that unit of people, I have no doubt that the wonderful work will continue. There's enough people that understand the history, and they will pass that on, and it will just keep evolving, and they'll be celebrating their 200th anniversary down the road and looking back at 2024 and what was happening then. And so, yes, I'm very grateful and optimistic that everything is going to be in good hands, and hopefully I'll be maybe a participant enjoying some of these classes I've always seen in the book and never had the chance to sign up for.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Lynn, thank you so much for speaking with me today and reflecting on your career with Milwaukee Recreation with me.
Thank you. It's fun talking about it, so I think that reflects the fun I've had doing the work. So thank you very much.
Lynn Greb is the Milwaukee Recreation's outgoing director, and she spoke with Lake Effect's Excrit Nunez. At the end of January, Greb will retire as Milwaukee Recreation's 10th director in the department's 114-year history.
You can find more interviews like this one by visiting wuwm.com/lakeeffect. And while you're there, subscribe to the Lake Effect Spotlight podcast.